know the exact words I said. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't be in the. Look, he's a sick puppy. He shouldn't be. He shouldn't be there.
So can you repeat that? Why did he say to you? Belong there, sir?
I don't know.
You said he's a sick puppy?
What do you mean? No, I didn't say that to him.
You just said you don't belong here.
Yeah.
Why did you want to say that to him?
I didn't expect that he'd be standing there trying to shake hands with every senator and the President of the United States. It's, given the fact that he's under ethics investigation, he should be sitting in the back row and staying quiet instead of parading in front of the president and people coming into the room.
Did he respond to you?
Look.
Did he respond?
He says that he embellished his record. Look, embellishing is saying you got an A when you get an A-. Lying is saying you graduated from a college you didn't even attend. And he shouldn't be in Congress, and they're going to go through the process and hopefully get him out. But he shouldn't be there, and if he had any shame at all, he wouldn't be there.
Why did you make a point to say that, though? I mean, it was kind of out of your way to.
Well, he was standing right there in the aisle, shaking hands with everybody.
Did he respond to you?
He may have. I didn't hear anything he said.
Are you disappointed that Kevin McCarthy has not called on him to resign?
Yes.
Now look, I'm not exactly a cheerleader for Mitt Romney, but at the same time, good on Romney for at least being able to do yet again what so few Republicans are willing to do. Let's just be honest here, George Santos is an embarrassment to the Republican Party. There is a 0% chance that Republicans look at George Santos and see him as anything other than an unwanted distraction at a time when they should be trying to make some case to the American people that they sent them into the House majority for a reason. And granted, even under the best conditions, they're hardly able to make that case, but especially not when they've got this clown out here stealing money from dogs and running from the law in Brazil. And so in a way, I understand why Romney is pissed off. But by that same logic, so should the rest of his party. He reflects poorly on all of them, not just Mitt. And yet the fact that Mitt's the only one who's got enough of a spine to actually call out George Santos really does put on full display the collective cowardice of that party. The GOP so obviously puts party above all else to the point where even with this blatant albatross around their necks, still they just grin and bear it because God forbid they utter a single ill word of another Republican. God forbid they don't just have blind deference for every single idiot with an R next to his name. And so instead, now every Republican just seems complicit in the lunacy. When you fail to condemn George Santos, then it certainly does give the impression that you approve of George Santos. And because he has a tendency to suck all the oxygen out of the room with his incessant barrage of lies being exposed and uncovered, then all of a sudden you've got him as the de facto face of the GOP. I doubt that's what Republicans wanted, but that sure is what Republicans got. Now, as far as George Santos is concerned, he's not inconvenienced by any of this, he's reveling in it. As Romney said, he put himself front and center, trying to shake hands with every senator and the President of the United States. That's not someone who's trying to lay low and keep the distractions to a minimum. That's someone who wants the attention, wants the notoriety, wants the drama. Which, by the way, shouldn't come as a surprise. This is the natural progression of a party run by Donald Trump. If your entire political ideology is predicated on complete fealty to an egomaniacal con man, then it's not exactly breaking news that the folks you're going to draw into that party are egomaniacal con men. Want further proof? Well, here's what George Santos himself has to say in response to Mitt Romney's comment here.
It's not the first time in history that I've been told to shut up and go to the back of the room, especially by people who come from a privileged background. And it's not going to be the last, and I'm never going to shut up and go to the back of the room. And I think it's reprehensible that the senator would say such a thing to me in the demeaning way he said. It wasn't very Mormon of him. That's what I can tell you.
Now, he also contended that Mitt Romney used, quote, derogatory language to him as Romney was entering the chamber. We asked Romney's office for any comment about that. They declined to comment about this episode, but Mitt Romney made very clear to me last night he wants George Santos to resign, and he wishes the Speaker of the House would join him in those calls.
It wasn't very Mormon of him. I mean, I'm sorry, but dude, maybe, of all people, George Santos might not be the best person to start throwing religion around. Criticizing someone isn't Mormon is being a sociopathic, pathological liar Christian or Jewish or whatever religion he's identifying as these days. I'm not exactly sure that George Santos is in the position to patronize someone based on the expectations set forth by their religion. Hell, I don't even know what religion George Santos goes by these days. And then, of course, there's the whole victimhood shtick, that he's lived a life of always having been told to shut up and go to the back of the room by people who come from a privileged background. First of all, part of what we know about George Santos is that he lied to underprivileged people. He wasn't some victim, he was the victimizer. The guy is accused of stealing money from a homeless veteran's dog. That's the guy who's currently crying crocodile tears about his station in life? He worked at a firm, Harbor City Capital, currently being investigated by the FEC for running a Ponzi scheme for defrauding over 100 victims out of $17 million. And as for the whole privileged people complaint, wherein he tries to position himself as this aw shucks little guy, George Santos spent his life precisely trying to position himself among those people. He said he worked at Goldman Sachs. He said he worked at Citigroup. He changed his name to something more Jewish so that he could rub elbows and raise money from wealthier investors. He pretended to be a landlord who owned all of this property. He wasn't rejected by these people. He spent his time trying to be these people. He didn't have disdain for them. He had envy for them. And so when George Santos comes out now and pretends that he's some example of a guy who beat the odds to make it to Congress despite his background, the guy is, per usual, full of shit. He's there in spite of his background. In fact, lying relentlessly and stepping over people on your way to the top isn't some feel-good story. It is as exploitative as it gets. Santos is just as bad, if not worse, as those very people who he's pretending to stand up to. But with that said, Santos's glaring lack of discretion is precisely why he's in the trouble that he's found himself in right now. It turned out that at the end of January, the Justice Department asked the FEC to hold off on any enforcement action against George Santos, which is as clear a signal as you could possibly get that the DOJ has opened a criminal investigation into Santos regarding the roughly $700,000 that was initially listed as a personal loan to his campaign, only for his office to then amend his filing and uncheck the box that said that money was a personal loan. And yet, despite the amended filing, still Santos claims that the funds were a personal loan, all of which is to say, no one knows where the hell the money is from. And if one thing is absolutely clear, it's that it sure does look like someone is lying here. And based on his track record, that probably doesn't bode too well for George Santos. Add that to the ongoing scrutiny into Harbor City Capital by the SEC and the open disdain for him from his own constituents in New York's 3rd Congressional District, and it doesn't seem like George Santos' future is going to be any brighter than his past. And while I'm sure that he relishes the attention, regardless of whether it's good or bad, there will come a point where he'll get what's coming to him. And hopefully the rest of this country sees the danger of a political party where the only principle is to lie, cheat, and steal, to do whatever necessary to consolidate power for yourself. Because George Santos isn't a bug in the GOP, he is a feature in it. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.